What's going on, JW Faction? My name is Joshua Williamson. It is Tier List Thursday, and for this tier list, get off my gosh dang screen, I'm going to be ranking WWE games. Losing my train of thought for a bit. This is going to be one of my shorter tier lists, because there's not a bunch of choices on here. But, yeah, I love WWE games. They're actually what got me into watching wrestling in the first place, was WWE games. The first time I ever got into wrestling, I started, well, actually, there was wrestling games I played before this. I remember the first wrestling game I played being WCW NWO Thunder. It was on the PS1. It was, it was fun when I was a kid, but I haven't played it since. I don't know if it's aged very well for me. Then there was a time where I played WWF No Mercy on the Nintendo 64. Then I played WrestleMania 2000 on the Nintendo 64. Both fun games. They're not anywhere on this tier list. But what really got me into watching wrestling was when I got into playing SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, And a few months after I was, really into playing that, I noticed it was on TV and I decided to watch it. And I've been a wrestling fan since. And I was 9 years old at the time. Alright. But anyways, let's get started. Now, there are some classics that are missing from this. I can notice that, and I'm not gonna have much of a problem with that. But anyways, let's get started. We're starting with SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, one of the most popular wrestling games ever. I gotta say, I enjoy the game, okay? I enjoy the game, but the control setting for it doesn't make it that enjoyable for me. And plus, the stamina system is very aggravating whenever I play matches. I know, I do agree that it has the best soundtrack of all the WWE games. I think out of all WWE games, SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 has the best soundtrack. And just a classic wrestling game in general. It was during the Ruthless Aggression era, which is my favorite pro wrestling era of all time. But, like I said, the control settings, having to press triangle to run, that throws me off majorly. I'm not a big fan of the control settings, so I'm putting SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 at B tier. Remember, this is my personal opinion. If you disagree with me, that's fine. It's just my personal opinion. SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 is B tier for me. Classic game, fun season mode, great soundtrack, but like I said, the control settings just throw me off. Now we got SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, the first wrestling game that I ever actually fell in love with. I'm putting that at S tier, just because, there are other wrestling games that I enjoy more, okay? But 2008, SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, it was the first one I ever really got into and fell in love with playing. So it's got a special place in my heart. SmackDown versus Raw 2009, I love this game. It's going at S tier as well. The Road to WrestleMania, that was like the introduction of the SmackDown vs. Raw Road to WrestleMania. So, back in the original SmackDown vs. Raw, which I didn't play, I'm getting to that in a second. It's actually right there, I'm gonna have to leave it off, but I haven't played it. It was the SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 was the introduction of the SmackDown vs. Raw Road to WrestleManias, and I thought those were the absolute best parts about all the SmackDown vs. Raw games. Well, they weren't in all SmackDown vs. Raw games. In the original SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, and 2008, there was season modes. Well, in 2008, it wasn't called a season mode, it was called 24/7 mode, but it was practically a season mode. So, but yeah, the Road to WrestleMania modes in SmackDown vs. Raw 2009, great, especially the Chris Jericho one. Yeah, SmackDown vs. Raw 2009, such a fun game. I feel like in 2008 also, I feel like that's where the control settings improved for me. I feel like the control settings were a lot better. And the same went for 2009. Alright, SmackDown vs. Raw 2010. I love SmackDown vs. Raw 2010. I actually have to get back into playing it at some point. I only did a few videos on it so far. And, the reason why I've taken a break from it for a long time is because it just felt very repetitive to me. I got really burnt out on the game. And plus, I tried to play it again, but my Elgato won't read my PS3, so I had to get a different capture card for my PS3. Uh, but yeah, SmackDown versus Raw 2010. That's going to get S tier as well. I absolutely love that game. You know, the Road to WrestleManias were so much fun in it, and you know they're just unforgettable to me. A lot of people, I feel like they don't get enough praise. Uh, I feel like more people need to, you know, realize how fun the Road to WrestleManias were in that game. And plus, it introduced, you know, when you do top turnbuckle moves, and you know, when you're doing a top turnbuckle move, and you know, maybe this will be longer than I thought. I have a lot more to think about. I have a lot more to talk about with this. Uh, in the older SmackDown vs. Raw games, if you were doing a top turnbuckle and you were happening to do one while the opponent was down, but while you were doing it, the opponent got back up quickly, you were still able to, you know, you weren't able to hit them well because it was only one that was performed while the opponent was laying on the ground. But when the opponent was standing up and you were doing a diving versus down opponent, versus ground opponent rather, and they quickly got back up while you were doing that move, you could still execute it pretty well starting in 2010. I felt like that was a massive improvement. But yeah, SmackDown vs. Raw 2010, great game. It's one of my top 3 favorites in the series. Now, my number 1 favorite wrestling game of all time is right here, SmackDown vs. Raw 2011. I absolutely adore the crap out of this game. It is my favorite wrestling game ever. The Road to WrestleManias, in the Road to WrestleManias in SmackDown vs. Raw 2011, you could actually explore the backstage area very well, and you could interact with other superstars, and they were just a lot of fun, especially the versus Undertaker one, where you play as either a creative wrestler, or Kofi Kingston, or John Morrison, or Dolph Ziggler, or R-Truth. I can't wait to show you guys that game in the future. SmackDown vs. Raw 2011. I feel like a lot of people don't give it enough praise. It's an S tier game. Like I said, my all-time favorite SmackDown vs. Raw game. It's actually my favorite wrestling game in general of all time. There's not one that I just have more fun with than that. Alright, and like I said with the original SmackDown vs. Raw, I haven't played that yet, so I gotta leave it off. WWE 12. Now, WWE 12, playing matches in it is fun, but it was the last game to date that had the Road to WrestleManias, and they had the worst Road to WrestleManias of all the games. They were too long. They dragged by, but you know, and you know the entrance settings you could have for a creative wrestler, they were just great. All the theme songs you could choose from, awesome, but you know, how lackluster the Road to WrestleManias were in WWE 12 knocks it down for me, but it's still a fun game to pass time by while playing. WWE 13, one of my absolute favorites. That's going at A tier. See, I love the WWE 2K games. Well, WWE 13, it's technically in a way a 2K game, and along with WWE 12, they just didn't have the 2K added. But, you know, they're similar. And, you know, what's great about WWE 13 is that it had a showcase where you could play old Attitude Era matches. Alright. Now that I'm hydrated, kind of. WWE 13, fun game, you know, fun entrance settings, you know, I love it. It's a great game, but I just don't like it as much as the top ones up here. WWE 2K14, so far, it is my favorite WWE 2K game. You know, 2K14, it gave us the 30 years of WrestleMania back when WrestleMania 30 was, you know, happening. You know, 30 years of WrestleMania, a bunch of fun classic WrestleMania matches you could play, and all the old legends that you could unlock. The game was so much fun. You know, there was so much to do in it, and it gave us this. It was the first game, I think it was the first game to have these special referee matches. I could be remembering wrong. Maybe it was 13. I can't remember. The first one I remember having it was 2K14. But yeah, 2K14, out of all the 2K games, it's my favorite one. WWE 2K15. Now, it forget that that was my phone. A lot of people don't like 2K15. Uh Now, I don't hate it. You know, it is one of the most disliked wrestling games from what I know. Uh it it had all right showcases. You know, they weren't really the most necessary showcases, but they were still kind of fun. And plus, the main menu soundtrack was pretty good too. Especially, they had a song by my favorite band of all time, Avenged Sevenfold, "This Means War," in the menu setting. That I really liked. But WWE 2K15, it's not one of my favorites in the series. C tier, but I don't hate it as much as other people do. Uh, but yeah, WWE 2K16, this was pretty fun. It was alright. B tier. The Stone Cold Steve Austin showcase was really good. Uh, but, you know, other than that, now, man, I wish I could have pre-ordered that in the past, because when you pre-order it, you could play as the Terminator. One of the most outlandish DLC character, well, pre-order characters you could get. I can't get him now because, you know, the servers are gone in that game, so I can't, unfortunately, get the Terminator. I can't play as him now. Never got to, and I most likely never will. Alright, up next, WWE 2K17. I don't remember playing this all that much. You know, it was... I first got WWE 2K17, you know, back... You see, in 2015, I was on the outs with WWE. This was before I started YouTube. I've had a few different instances where I was on the outs from WWE, and the reason I was on the outs from WWE back then was because I just couldn't bear the Authority anymore. I thought the Authority was, you know, I can't think of one of the heel stables that has been shoved down my throat more than the Authority. But, you know, I was getting back into it, you know, around the time WWE 2K17 was still played. But then again, I just don't remember it that well. So, because of that, it's going in C tier. WWE 2K18. This is a fun game, but, you know, in the, I think it was called My Career, you know, the My Career mode in WWE 2K18. There was no voice acting at all. It was just very boring. You know, 2K18, not a bad game, not at all, but it just, and the only way you could unlock all the wrestlers, like, there wasn't any modes where you could unlock all the wrestlers. You just had to, you know, just play a bunch of matches and get as much, like, credit points as you could, you know, and it required a lot. And at the time, you know, I couldn't get a supercharger. But anyways, up next, 2K19. I think, you know, in the gap between, in the gap of from 2K15 to 2K18, I felt like this was the biggest improvement of all of them. 2K19, I think it's my second favorite 2K game to date. Uh, Great game. The Daniel Bryan showcase was a lot of fun. You guys remember, I had, some of you remember how I used to put random captions on Vince McMahon's clothing and use him as, you know, my punching bag in WWE 2K19. That was the last 2K game I enjoyed before, you know, you guys remember the first time on YouTube I went on the outs with WWE, because the quality of the show in 2018 and 19 was just awful. And speaking of awful, we have the absolute worst, in my opinion, the most awful wrestling game ever, WWE 2K20. This game is garbage. Absolute garbage. The biggest mess out of all the games. It was a glitchy mess. There wasn't really much redeeming qualities about it at all. You know, and kind of like, and the glitchiness, there's a very similar problem in the Nintendo Switch version of WWE 2K18. Then again, 2K games on the Nintendo Switch are usually not going to be good. But yeah, 2K20 was a disaster. WWE 2K22, massive improvement over 2K20. You know, all the games are, really. 2K22 is still a lot of fun, though. It's going at A tier. 2K23, I like that a little bit more than 2K22. That's going at A tier. Smackdown, Here Comes the Pain, one of the most popular ones. You know, I have the same feelings of this as 2007. Like, I don't like the control setting. The control setting is just very off-putting to me. You know, if it had the same control settings as like either like the earliest game that I like the control setting of 2008 SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, if it had the same control setting as that, I would have liked it more. And also, I actually like it less in SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 because when you were playing the matches, there was nothing but music playing. You know, there was no commentary, and yeah. SmackDown, Shut Your Mouth. Now, I think I like this game a little bit more than Here Comes the Pain. But then again, it's not one of my all-time favorite wrestling games. You know, the season mode, you know, like I said, back then there wasn't any voice acting in the games. But something that was really fun about SmackDown, Shut Your Mouth is that one of the custom entrances in that game was like a Spider-Man entrance, and I actually created Spider-Man in that game and gave him that entrance. That was probably my favorite thing about it. Alright, but anyway, SmackDown 2 Know Your Role. I haven't played that, so I gotta leave it off. Actually, these 4 games are the only games of all these that I haven't played. So yeah. That's been my SmackDown versus Raw. Well, actually, that's been my WWE game tier list. What do you guys think of this? If you disagree with me on any of these, perfectly fine, just my opinion. But post some below the opinions on this. If you like to see you thumb up, hey, see you thumb it down. Also show me my backup channel down in the description box. And be sure to subscribe to become a member of the GW faction on a journey to 10,000 subscribers. God loves you. See you later.